integration in logical learning.
The Darkling Thrush, Thomas Hardy, discussed by Anindita Sarkar. Thomas Hardy, 2nd June 1840 to 11 January 1928. Thomas Hardy, mostly famous for his novels, wrote poems throughout his life and loves to regard himself as a poet. But unfortunately, his first collection of poems, Wessex Poems, was not published before 1898. Thomas Hardy wrote in a great variety of poetic forms, including lyrics, ballads, satire, dramatic monologues, and dialogue, as well as a 3-volume epic closed drama and even war poems. Some of Hardy's more famous poems are from poems of 1912 to 13, part of Satires of Circumstance 1914, written following the death of his wife Emma in 1912. Although his poems were initially not as well received as his novels had been, Hardy is now recognized as one of the great poets of the 20th century, and his verse had a profound influence on later writers. Introduction. The Darkling Thrush is a meditative poem by Thomas Hardy in which he describes the dying of the old world at the turn of the century. He talks about the end of the 19th century and beginning of the 20th century. Because of the Industrial Revolution and the changes brought about by it in the society, polity, economy, and religious beliefs, he feels that all has changed. Civilization has decayed and he doesn't know what will replace it. He is deeply depressed by the state of affairs. He hears a third singing joyful which baffles him to think about the cause that makes the bird so happy. In such gloomy landscape, the bird singing has a hope which the poet does not have, but he longs for it. Stanza 1. I leant upon a coppice gate when frost was spectre grey and winter's dregs made desolate the weakening eye of day. The tangled vine stems covered the sky like strings of broken lyres, and all mankind that haunted nigh had out their household fires. Summary of stanza 1. The poet paints a somber picture of the world. The mood feels lonely and meditative. The speaker watching as a silent bystander leaning upon the coppice gate, a gate that opens into the woods. In his loneliness, the poet has personified winter and frost. Frost is described as spectre grey or ghost like grey. The winter's dregs, the fallen snow and heavy fog, are making twilight dusk. The weakening eye of day look desolate. So as you can see, the winter and the frost are bleak company. They cannot arouse any sense of cheerfulness. Climbing plants dead for winter have left behind only their climbing stems or vine stems. They add to the gloominess as the poem compares them to the smile of strings of broken lyres, a musical instrument notching the sky. This comparison is also important in suggesting the lack of music or happiness for that matter. Even people seem listless and haunting. Instead of living their lives, the people going home and seeking their household fires add to the image of the gloomy end of the day. There is no vibrancy in life or color. Stanza 2. The land's sharp features seem to be the century's corpse outlined. His script, the cloudy canopy, the wind his death lament, the ancient pulse of germ and birth was shrunken, hard and dry, and every spirit upon earth seemed fervorless as I. Summary of stanza 2. Winter in the northern hemisphere is also the end of the year. Here it becomes even more meaningful as the end of the year in this case also marks the end of the century. This is why century is personified as a corpse. The harsh winter landscape defining its wasted body. The cloudy canopy or sky covers the century's tomb and the sad wind becomes a song of death. In winter, nature is generally a standstill. Life's vibrancy, ancient pulse of germ and birth, seems to have stopped, shrunken, hard and dry. The dormant environment feeds the poet's brooding frame of mind. The scale of his pessimism increases. Dull observation escalates to a disappearing mindset, and the poet only sees a world without promise or future. Stanza 3. At once a voice arose among the bleak twigs overhead in a full-hearted evensong of joy limited. An aged thrush, frail, jaunt and small, in blast beruffled plume, had chosen thus to fling his soul upon the growing gloom. Summary of stanza 3. Suddenly, like the proverbial silver lining to dark clouds, a joyful song breaks into the poet's disappearing outlook from among the frosty twigs overhead. The poet calls the thrush melody a full-hearted ever song, prayer sung at the end of the day, in the evening. The song was coming out of boundless joy. Look at the use of word illimited, suggesting something uncommon. But who was it singing? It was an old thrush bird, feeble, lean, and small, with its feathers disarranged by the wind. Blast Berryfield. Though the thrush appearance does not arouse any hope, heedless of oppressive environment and the growing darkness, the mark of struggling to survive in winter. The thrush sings. The bird puts his soul into his voice as he belts out a happy tune to no one but the eternal listener. Remember the word evensong, a prayer. Though the title of the poem suggested that it was all about a thrush, it took 2.5 stanzas to get to the first mention of the bird. But still, the thrush and its song seem to overcome the initial melancholy that the atmosphere brought even to the readers. Stanza 4. So little cause for carolings of such exotic sound was written on terrestrial things. Afar or nigh around, that I could think there trembled through his happy good night air some blessed hope whereof he knew and I was unaware. Summary of stanza 4. No one knows what inspires the darkling thrush singing compared to singing Christmas carols. The exotic sound of the thrush is in complete contrast to such a hopeless situation. The poet cannot think of any earthly event or cause, near or far away, that could be responsible. The thrush song is an enigma, and the poet marvels at the blessed hope or knowledge the bird has. There are no straight answer. Does the thrush sing a song of farewell, a hymn of gratitude for the good things that have been? Or does he sing a song of hope, a assurance of good things that are to come? Like the poet, we can only wonder, keep our hearts open, and just be glad that there is a reason to be happy at all.